Hey guys, Nigel here, back with you, and it's part 9 now of this Bronco build, and you probably can't believe it, you've got 2 videos on this model in the same year. Wow. Right, so where are we? Last time we did the undercarriage bay, and we put all the photo etch in there, if you remember, and we talked about how we bend the photo etch, how we glue the photo etch, and all that sort of stuff. So now we're going to be looking at the cockpit, and I'm going to start off by talking about tools. I'm going to start off talking for beginners, and we're going to talk about how to use photo etch for beginners. Now, if straight away you want to get on your keyboard and start complaining, please switch this video off now because it's not for you. Various people do complain when I do videos with tools and stuff for beginners. I think people forget that they were also a beginner once, but this is the way the video is going to be. So if you don't want to see about tools for beginners and using photo etch and stuff, then just switch off and come back for part 10. Right, so as we said before, Eduard instructions, we get them with the set, but you can also download them from the Eduard website and print them out yourself. Do it double-sided, save the planet, save paper, and you've got a much bigger instruction sheet then than you have with the one you get in here. Your Eduard photo etch set these days will normally contain a colour set, so you can see here we've got the colour parts in here. Make sure we're not getting a load of glare. You've got the colour parts in there, the instrument panels and everything, and the backings. We've also got something else that's an issue often with the Eduard sets. You've got this grey colour in here that you need to match, and the colour on these sets can be a little off. It can also be quite grainy. I've got a set for a 32nd scale Junkers 88, and the colour grey is awful. The RLM 63, isn't it? Or 66, I can't remember now. And the colour match is awful, and it's also very, very grainy. So quite often you mask up here and paint over that. And then you'll also get a plain set in here. Nice to see that these days they don't plate it anymore. They always used to plate their sets with like a nickel. So they were bright and shiny, and it made them more difficult to solder. But I don't think we're doing any soldering here. But there we go, there's our set. So we've got our kit instructions here, which include this is the first page. You've got the seats going together there, and we've got the cockpit and everything here. But we're going to be using these instructions, and obviously now all this is just, you see the symbols here, it's telling you to fold it over, fold these levers up and put them in from behind. With Eduard, they have a constant legends. You can see up here the legends, the different symbols, and they remain the same with Eduard all the way through the range, from way back beyond to current sets and everything. And it's really, really good. They show the actual plastic part numbers in black, okay, and then they show the photo etch part numbers are in blue. This symbol here means fold. This R, okay, so they're telling you here R, G14, G15. So G14 and 15 will be rudder pedals, and they're telling you to replace them with the photo etch ones, and they're folding them up. And this one here is to do the same on the other side. Okay, now whether they're referring to the other side as the rear cockpit, I'm not sure, but we will soon find out. So that's just there, fold, fold, fold. They also tell you often to add wire or some plastic rod, and they normally give you a size. Here they haven't, but we just use a little thin piece of wire on there. What other symbols we've got? We've got a symbol here, which is file off. Okay, so that doesn't mean cut, it means just file it smooth. So you've got the instrument panel here, and you can just file it smooth, and then we can glue these parts on. Quite often, if the instrument panel is symmetrical, it's something like a World War I Viter perhaps, you can often just turn it around and use the back side, save you having to file it. Or sometimes you can just cut one out of plastic card, so you can keep this one for your spares bin. You can see here they're telling you to remove, okay, so that knife blade there, that symbol there with the knife blade, okay, that's telling you to remove that bit of plastic, and then you're going to glue that piece of photo etch onto there, and where it's shaded blue is where you're going to be gluing stuff on. You see here it's telling us to cut that off, or file it off should I say, and then here you're going to cut off the top of the headrest. You're going to replace it with that piece of photo etch. You're going to cut that piece off of there, off the top of that whatever it is, and you're going to add a piece of photo etch. Sorry, you're not going to cut it off, you're going to file it off and add that piece of photo etch. And then here we've got some brackets and stuff for the closing mechanism for the canopy. Now it's telling you to replace parts here, so you've obviously got plastic parts in the kit. Sometimes Okay, I know it may break your heart after you've bought the set. Sometimes you may look at the plastic parts and think, I prefer that. I mean, the plastic parts here might be a bit chunky, I'm not sure. Let's have a look in the instructions, let's see what they look like. But sometimes they will be quite nice. So what they're telling you, I-47 and I-48, they're telling you to replace. I have to turn the camera off in a minute. I think I'm getting a bit of a dry throat. I've hardly spoken to anyone all day. Where is the canopy fitting? It's already on there. So, I mean, these instructions are like impossible. There we go. So they're telling you to replace I-47 and I-48. I-47 and I-48. Okay, so obviously they're very simplistic, and what they've got here is the more accurate. You can see in the instructions what we've got there is a little bracket. So what they're telling us to do here is replace those parts. Now sometimes you'll look at this and think, you know, sometimes there might be a cable or something that's moulded in plastic in a cockpit, and okay, you may have a seam to clean up on the plastic part, but certainly in 32nd scale it's better to have a round plastic part to represent some cabling than a flat piece of brass. It's going to look a lot more realistic when it's painted. So you sort of pay your money, it takes your choice. And the other thing to remember with these photo etch sets, guys, if you are new to it, you don't have to use all of it. There's nothing that says you have to use it all. Sometimes you'll get tiny little nuts or rot washers or little tiny discs to represent, you know, Zeus fasteners or something. You don't have to use them. And another one that's good to avoid often is when you get bits like this. Sometimes you'll see these fuel fillers and stuff, like photo etch parts like that, and you know, you may have the detail on the wing. Let's have a look. Okay, so on the wing we've only got discs. All right, so in that case you'd use them, but if you have them moulded on the plastic and they look absolutely fine, why cut them off to add another piece of flat photo etch? Never understood that one. So and also, before you start sanding away to replace bits needlessly, have a look at the photo etch, because sometimes the photo etch will be etched off center, or if it's a color part it may be colored off center. So it's always worth having a look first to make sure that your photo etch part is okay before you start sanding away your plastic. So yeah, have a look, make your own mind up, see what you think, and go from there. But quite often I've had these photo etch sets and I think, why are they replacing that? You know, what's the point? Yep, it's thinner, but in real life it would have been, you know, a piece of duralumin that's milled. It's half an inch thick. What's wrong with plastic? It's fine. So have a little think about that. Anyway, I've waffled enough. So now we're going to look at what we're going to specifically do to this cockpit tub to add these pieces here. So let me get myself sorted out and we'll go from there. Okay, so we've got our photo etch parts here out of the packet. We've got our instructions, we've got our cockpit floor, so we're good to go. Now, if you remember in under part 8, I said I was going to talk about doing some checks, doing some research, and it does look like the photo etch is correct. When you see bits like this in your photo etch, before you start hacking away, check your references, make sure you're happy with what it is you're actually doing. There have been occasions where, and I can't remember any kit specifically, and if I could I would mention them, but there have been occasions where the photo etch has actually been incorrect and the kit was correct. So, you know, be a little bit careful. But sometimes you get certain variations of certain aircraft, and the guys doing the research at Edward may have picked up a bit of information that's, you know, just specific to one standard of aircraft or something. So, you know, it could be that this is correct for an A but not for a C, for example. So always check your references first. I've had a look at some references. Very difficult to find pictures of the rear cockpit, but I have found some, and it does look like this is actually correct. It looked like the guy sat in the back had really pretty much nothing much to do at all. He had a very basic instrument panel. All that he had on the right hand side was like an oxygen control thing. Really not much at all. So worth looking into. So anyway, let's have a look at this. So we've got our cockpit floor, and the major things it's telling us is to sand off all this detail on here, and what we're going to do is replace that with these parts here. So we've got part number 13 there, so you can see, if if I get this close up to the camera, we're going to replace all this here with this here. Now, when you really get into modelling, something you might want to think about if you are a beginner is actually cutting these off and then saving the knobs and gluing them back on the top of there. Or you can get the anise stuff and anise bits and pieces. But sometimes these can be a little bit two-dimensional when they should have some lumps and bumps on them and stuff. So I may well do that. We may well see how that goes. The other thing you can do is like blobs of varnish or something. It can just give it a bit of a sort of look like there's some bumps on there or whatever. So that's something worth looking into. So anyway, we've got this now. So what we're going to do is replace that panel there with that panel there. All right, now this isn't self-adhesive. Sometimes the Eduard photo etch is self-adhesive. It's got a foil on the back. I would always recommend gluing it as well with super glue, because the glue that they use can actually just dry out, and then your model, your cockpit faces and stuff start to fall off after your model's built, and you don't want that. I'm just going to first of all just remove this little bit of sprue nib I've got left on there, just a tiny little bit of it. Okay, that's all good. There's a little bit left on the top there. I'm going to get a 400, just sand over that just to make sure that's nice and flat. Okay, so that's that. Now you can see here at the tool it's telling you to sand this flat, so they're telling us to remove all the detail that's on there, everything. We're not going to leave anything behind, and then that panel is going to replace it. So you can see that this is actually inaccurate. This is probably all correct for the D model. So nice coarse-ish sander stick. This is a 220 grit Infini zebra stick, but you need something hard. It's no good coming in there with a soft sponge like this, because all you'll do is you'll sand off the detail, and you'll also sand away all your cockpit and everything. And another little tip, because we're going to be going over this with photo etch, it doesn't matter if you use pen. You know I like to use pencil a lot. Go over with a pen, okay, and then when the actual pen starts to get sanded away, you know you've gone far enough. All right, so using the flat stick, gently sanding away on that detail. And notice I'm only sanding in one direction. If you start going like this, you're likely to, exaggerated, produce something round. So I'm only sanding in one direction. And we can see I've got a little bit of a tip to the right there, to the left, sorry. So I'm going to come back on this side. And I'm going to put some more magic marker on it to make sure what I don't want to do is end up having a slope on there, or indeed making it into a bridge. There we go. I'm not really putting any pressure on at all. Okay, so we're almost there, so I'm going to change to a 400. And now with the 400 I can go both ways because it hardly takes anything off. And now there will be some pen remaining because there were indentations, so if I've got some pen indentation, that's fine. But what I want to do is, like this area here, I want to remove all that pen because it's not flat. There we go. There's a nice flat surface there ready to glue our photo etch down to. Okay, so that's all good. And then the same on here, you can see on the instructions it's telling us to remove this area up here and this area here, but leave this console here for the throttle controls, which we may actually add from scrap, and I'll show you how to do that. So again, we can come in with our pen and mark out all the areas. Just like so. And then with the 220 grit, I'm just going to gently scrape over here. If all you have is sandpaper, like pieces like this, get out, just go out and get yourself some sanding sticks. You can get the ones from the supermarket for fingernails and stuff. You can see I've got some here. That's just an ordinary fingernail stick. You can use that absolutely fine. Okay, it does the same job as you can see, but they don't last as long, and they tend to be kind of, they're not suitable for modelling. They don't have the right grits and everything on them. But it's no good using sanding paper. It's like you'll see people trying to sand large areas with, you know, with a piece of sandpaper on their finger. All they're doing is reproducing the shape of the end of their finger. You know, you need to be something flat. If you're trying to sand something flat, you need something flat to sand it flat. Okay, so that's my main tip. I mean, it doesn't have to be infinity. You can go and get the Flory sticks or whatever, or the UMP ones, which I hear people rate. I've never had them myself, not for any reason. I just haven't had them, but I hear they're very good. These are Infini. I get these from Ed at Premium Hobbies down in Weston-super-Mare, and he sends me the stuff to try out, so I use it. So, and I'm really glad he did, because I thoroughly recommend them to anyone. I love them, these Infini sticks. There we go. We can see that that's not level, so be careful of going across and trying to sand both at once. You can see this one's slightly higher than that one, so if you try and sand them both at once, you'll end up with angles everywhere. Okay, so now I'm going to use my 400 grit. Just to finish that off. There we go. And then, right, now we're getting interesting. So we've sanded that off, so we're ready for the front, ready for the pilot's, or the forward seat to be done. That's all good. Okay. That's all good. So now we need to look for the rear end. Now it's telling us here to remove a lot of plastic. So from this side, we're going to completely remove this console, and we're going to replace it with this piece of photo etch here. To make sure you're not being glared. This piece of photo etch here that I'm pointing to is going to fold up and cover this area here. So we need to remove this. Now you'll see people coming with cutters and they start hacking away at stuff. I would always advise against that, because when you cut plastic with cutters, let me find a piece of scrap here. I can show you on this, okay? If I try and cut this end off with cutters, watch what happens. See how it bends it? Here, when I close the cutters, it pushes it apart. And if I use cheap ones, like these, it's even worse. See how much it bends it away? Look what happens when I try and cut it. It snaps things off. So if you try and come in here now and start hacking that off, if what's above is stronger than what's below, it will actually break it downwards. Yeah, so you can imagine if I do that there like that, okay, that's breaking it that way. If I now turn it over and cut it this way, it still breaks it below. You see it's left an awful horrible edge on there. Okay, so worth remembering, don't use your cutters. Get yourself a saw, a scriber. You can use a pin, you can use a knife. But you want to be cutting the plastic away, not hacking away at it. So with this one, it's showing that we're going to go all the way down to the base. Okay, and then that piece of photo etch is going to go in there. So what we can do here, we need something square to mark a vertical line across the back of this here. Now the best thing for that is a rule. So you can, well, not the best thing, but it's a tool you can use. So you can get your rule, come along here on the floor so it's nice and flat. Okay, so I can push that along the end of there and make sure that lines up with the end of this quadrant, or just go a little bit away from it, and then I can use my knife, okay, just to score a line. Make sure your fingers are out the way underneath, and I can just score a vertical line. Make sure the rule stays vertical, score a line in there. Okay, now you can't see that line because the camera's not going to pick it up. I can see it. So what I'll do now I know that that's okay, in that position, I can come in with a scriber, pick up the line I've just cut, and then go vertical. In fact, I can't pick it up because it's not deep enough. Oops, I'm trying to throw the rule everywhere. So I'm going to hold this rule in place, like so. And I'll come in with the scriber straight away. And just gently, and not putting any pressure on it, you don't want to be hacking in, just gently pull back on the scriber. This is a Tamiya scriber, it's actually an Alpha P cutter, okay? So look up Alpha P cutter or Tamiya scriber. Okay, so you can probably see that now I've scribed a line in there. Okay, so we can now use the scriber to follow that line. It's much easier to scribe when you're actually resting on something. Okay, and I'm just using the scriber just to make a mark in it. I'm not going to go gouging in or anything. This blade is quite blunt because I've been using it a lot on my Titanic build. And then the same across here. We can come across here and we're going to lay just above the surface and scribe a line. Okay, now what you can do with this now, you can keep scribing until you go through. Be careful of your fingers behind because it is quite sharp, although saying that this one's quite blunt. Alright, so you can go in like that and just keep going, or you can come with a saw, but you'll see that it won't fit in there, so we're best off staying with the scriber. And if you have got one of these, I'm just going to show you quickly how to sharpen it. Nice flat file, okay, nice flat face on there, and just file the front of the scriber just like so, and that will improve it no end. There we go, it's cutting a lot better now. Now something has happened, it started to go down at the back end, so I'm going to try and make it come up. Yeah, I've got a nice line now coming all the way up. You can see it's not straight. It doesn't matter, all we're doing is removing scrap plastic. Alright, so we've got there now. Now with our saw, I'm going to come along and I'm going to cut down here vertically, and I'm going to use the saw to pull. Now this saw is, you can find them on eBay. It's from Libor Kopacek. You can see it there. Czechoslovakian guy, or Czech Republic should I say. It's a JLC saw, not seesaw, as in seesaw. It's a JLC saw, okay, and you get the blades, they're like razor blades. I think it's the best little saw on the market. It's absolutely brilliant. You can get the trumpeter one, which is here, which I think is awful. The blade is far too fat. You get a selection of blades. The blades are far too thick. But the problem is with this, you have this mechanism here, and that blade goes in there, and you've got a little indentation, a little lump on there, which goes into that hull. Okay, and then you push that forward and it wedges over it, but that's just a piece of plastic. And while you're using it, you touch it, the blade just comes out. So not the best tool. None of the trumpeter tools, the whole trumpeter tools range is not that good. I would sort of advise spending a bit more. It's like their riveting wheel is not very good at all. I got one and it's got a plastic bearing, or the actual stainless steel disc, which is only about 0.1 thick, is turning on a plastic hub. Well, you can imagine what happens. So they're great little tools for using once or twice, but they're not really good for longevity. You can see this blade is broken, and that's one of the problems with them, because they're so hard. They tend to be quite brittle. Now where I scribe that, I can just snap that off now. Okay, so there we go, and it is actually snapping off on the initial scribe line, and it doesn't want to come away, so I'm just going to come in with the scriber and do some more, and it should snap off then. Blimey, this plastic's quite is the word I'm looking for, ductile. There we go. So now we've got that, let's get this out of the way, I don't want to go damaging that. Now we've got that like that, we can come along with a knife, clean up the bottom. Now you'll see me cutting towards myself. You should always cut away. But unfortunately, I've got in the habit of cutting towards myself and very, very rarely have an accident. I won't say never because that would be a lie. But I very, very rarely have an accident. So I tend to just keep going it my way. Okay, so you can see I've left some material on there ready to be sanded away. Now what I can do now is just come with a coarser sanding stick and sand away. I could put my rule in there if I want to and then mark a line. The line doesn't need to be perfectly in position. In fact, it's a good idea to have it a bit too far back, so you're not sanding to the line, but you are sanding parallel to the line. Alright, so now we've got a nice line there to work to. So I can now use my 220 stick, and I'm going to purposely have the stick like this exaggerated, so I'm not sanding this away here, because what I don't want to do is end up sanding like that. Okay, so I've purposely got the stick on an angle. It's very difficult for you to see what I'm doing, I know, because we're in a kind of enclosed space. What I want to do is just sand that line where I'm sanding. I want it to be parallel to that line. Okay, and then on the base again we can cut that down just like so. We can scrape it, and we want to make sure that we get into the corner, get a nice sharp corner in there. You don't want a radius because we're going to be folding that photo etch and it needs to sit in there nice and flat, just like so. Okay, now once again, if you want to, you can come in with your pen. You can mark up the area that you're not going to sand, and then when you see the sanding stick touch it, then you know you've gone far enough. And making sure I'm keeping the sanding stick parallel to the surface of the floor. You can see I'm nearly there at the back. So I'm just going to scrape some more plastic away coming forward. Sorry, I hit my head on the camera then, or on the phone should I say. There we go, I'm happy with that. I'm going to cut some more plastic off of here, just to square that up. I'm going to once again use my pen. You notice I use the pen a lot. I like to do it, but I would advise using a pencil rather than a pen. I say this all the time. The problem is with a pen is if you paint over it and you've still got pen there, it'll come through your paint. Okay, so there we go. There's 400 stick, 400 grit, and then just sand over it, and we will then end up with a nice flat area. Just clean that up on the back there, just radius that in so it goes into that throttle quadrant. You can see on the side I've sanded it parallel to the line that I marked in there. See that there? Okay, so that means we're nice and square. And then we're going to come with our knife and make sure we get a nice sharp corner, so that when we fold our photo etch, it fits in there nice and cleanly without a great big radius in its way. Just wipe the blade off so you can see what you're doing. Come in like that. And generally, if I want to get in there and make sure it's nice and square, I could come in with my, these are the Infinity Photo Etch sanders. They're really good for stuff like this because they're very hard and they're very flat. And then we can use there's a narrower one here. This is the 5mm one, and that'll get in that gap in there, look. And there we are, that's that done. So that's that side taken care of. So now we've got to do this side, and we're going to make a cut along the base there. Now we can see from the instructions that we're going to leave this raised area here, the blue area, and that's flush with the top of this area here. So where I'm going to mark there with a pen, we're going to basically cut along there, but we want to make sure we keep it parallel. So I've measured that there, and I've used my calipers and I've measured it. It's 2mm high, so that means it's 2mm thick. So I've got a piece of 2mm plastic here, okay, which I can't quite get in there. So I'm going to use my cheap nasty cutters and just cut a lump off of it. Okay, and that'll fit in there now. No, it won't. Let's cut some more off. God blimey. I'm not using my nice Tamiya cutters because it's likely to break them. Okay, so that'll fit in there now. So now I can use that as a guide. Alright, so I can mark a line if I want to. Alright, so I've got the line there as a guide. But I can also use it to guide my scriber. Just keep going. Actually, that's quite good. That's worked out quite well. That wedges in there because of the shape. It's wedged in there. So if you are building this, that might be something you want to consider. If you don't have the Eduard Photo Etch for this, you could always do a bit of scratch building. You could easily do this with plastic card. Just a piece of flat plastic card in there, and then a piece of flat plastic card to cover what we're cutting out now. Quite easily. Now what I can do now is get in here with the saw, I think, and follow that scribed line and just cut through. Yeah, it's not very easy to get in there because because we've got this in the way here. So I think I'll carry on with the scriber. I may use the saw in this bit here. Again, using it as a pull saw. Pull it back, leave a bit of material on the top. Don't try and get it right down flush straight away. And you can see how good these are at cutting. They're absolutely amazing. Fantastic little tool. I'm going to come back to the scriber. I'm going to turn around because I want to get... No, I'm going to have to use the saw. I can't get into that corner with the scriber, so I'm going to use the saw just to go through this area here. And as I say, guys, if you're an experienced modeler and you're bored, switch off, because this video is all for the beginner, the newbie on using Photo Etch. I've had a lot of requests to do a kind of this is how I do photo etch thing. You can see that's ready now to basically break off. And you can see the scriber is almost coming through the back, so we should be able to get in this side with the saw now. It's not the best example to show you guys actually because of the difficulty of filming it because of how small it is. There we go. So now I want to sand that nice and flat. So I'm going to come back with my piece of scrap plastic, wedge that in there. Yeah, you guessed it, use the pen. Come along with a piece of, with this 220 grit stick. And now I can sand that. Nice and level and flat. And the plastic card, with a piece of 2mm plastic, should make sure I stay nice and flush and everything and level. I think the plastic card is just slightly higher. So we'll just keep it in there and we'll sand everything together, keeping the sanding stick flat upon the plastic card. There we go. So that's that done there. And there we are, all ready for our photo etch to go on. So the photo etch is going to have a folded over edge on it there that's going to go over that lip, and then it's going to sit on top of this here. And there we go. Now it's showing on here there's a hole, but on here the hole is flashed over, so I'm not sure if it's supposed to be there or not. There are holes in this, so I'm actually thinking it is supposed to be there. So what I'm going to do is come in from behind with a knife and just push that through, and the same there. I think the holes are flashed. I think it's an error in the moulding. I don't think it's intentionally flashed over. Now this doesn't need to be perfect because it's going to be covered with a piece of photo etch, so you might even decide to cut it a bit bigger, and then if it does just remain visible with nothing in it, I've got a feeling an instrument panel is going to go in here or something. So just open them out, remove the flash, just like so. There we go, that's them opened out. Could use my narrow skinny stick or sanding stick just to go over there, like that. Job done. And then we'll clean up the burrs that are remaining. And there's our part, all sanded, cleaned up. We've got our plastic parts here removed, and we're ready to start fitting the photo etch. Now you need to think about the sequence you're working in here and look at what you've got. Now you've got pedals here. You might want to glue them in before you think about painting, because they're going to be painted as well. You've got panels going on here which aren't pre-coloured. You've got panels going on which are pre-coloured. So the thing to do is fit all the unpainted photo etch first and then get it all painted, and then we'll put this on afterwards. Failing that, what you can do is put the colour on first, mask it and spray it. Problem with that is sometimes when you peel the masking tape off, it will pull this painted on detail off of here, so be a little bit careful what you do in there. So let's look at getting this photo etch off of here. We'll get it folded up and we'll get it glued on. Something I've just realised, guys, I forgot to go from the very beginning with the beginner's photo etch. You need to, the first thing you need to do is familiarise yourself with everything and make sure you're not going to make any mistakes, and you're not going to go on gluing plastic parts in without doing the photo etch or whatever. So one of the things you need to do is prepare yourself. So, you know, sat down listening to a documentary or something or whatever, get your photo etch instructions, get your kit instructions, and start having a look. Now, I use a code system and I use a red pen on my instructions. You can use a red pencil or something if you want to. But I'm basically going to go through here and make sure that I mark on my instructions what I've actually got to change or replace, add to, whatever. Okay, so for instance, we look here, we've got replace G14 and G15, which are our rudder pedals, and we can see here we've got our rudder pedals going in. Where are they? Oh yeah, I knew I'd seen them. So we've got G14 and G15 opposite. Okay, so next to that, I'm gonna put a line through it and go RPE. That to me is replace photo etch. Okay, now on the rear end, I don't think there are any pedals. No, there aren't. Although we do have slots for them. Now this is something you've got to be careful of with a lot of these kits, is all of a sudden something will appear. It's like here, look, you've got your throttle levers here. You've got G56 here, okay, and G57 there. And then it's telling you here, add PE12, which is the two little throttle levers, but they're there as well. So you need to make sure that you're, you know, keep your eyes open, make sure you're looking around on your instructions. Now we have got, there are slots in the floor for rudder pedals, but there are no rudder pedals, and it looks like this panel here, 38, is going to cover that area anyway, so not to worry. So as I say, we use the codes RPE to replace PE, and if we're going to add PE, what I do then is I go PE, there, there, and there. Okay, so I know I'm adding PE. So when it actually comes to using this part, I've got PE written by the part number. So that's that. And then we can actually, if you want to, you can go along like this and put lines to show you're going to cut it away, whatever. So that's what I do. And then moving forward, you know, you've got the, you've got this part F7. Wherever that may be. I'm not even sure where it's going to go. We've got here, let's look, G28 and G27. Where are they? G28, G27. Okay, they're going in those slots I just opened up. So here, PE. Okay, and then PE there. So you know when you're in the instructions, you've got to add PE to those parts. With your seats, you're going to be covering the instructions in it, and then you've got with your instrument panels here, you've got PE, okay, and then going over the page, where are we? Here, the forward instrument panel, which we're not looking at yet. That's here. So we've got here, we've got PE. And here we've got PE. Okay, and you can make a note here, PE, on there and on there, because you've got it going on those two parts. So just basically going through your instructions and working everything out and making sure you don't miss anything, because the way it goes in here won't necessarily be the way it is in the instructions. Here we go, this G26. Okay, G26 is having PE. And then we've got the windows going in the sides, and they are also going to have PE. So GP2 and GP1, PE, PE, and we've got 29 and 30, PE, PE. And it's just a case of going through like that. Now that part there, I can't exactly find where that's going at the moment, but I will find it at some point, and then I'll mark it in instructions. There it is. So part F7, PE. Alright, simple as that. So there we go, guys. Let's get on with this build. Okay, right. Another thing to do is remember to look at the instructions and see what they're telling you. Now, as I said, this black number here and this black number here, they're showing you the part numbers, the plastic part numbers. So this here is showing you F17, so it's showing you how you add these bits of photo etch onto there. So that is that part that way round, you can see, for adding those panels in. Now, this one here is saying F23. When we look in the instructions, we can see here this is F23, and that has these details glued onto it, that it gets flipped over and glued into the floor. And you can see on here they've got a greyed out area showing where it goes. I think that's what's telling us, is to put that in there, and then when we fit this part here, 38, that needs to be butted up against it. So I've got F23, I've got F2, I've cut it out, I've glued it on, I've got some ejector pin marks in there, which I'm not going to worry about at the moment because we may not be able to see them. But I'm just going to put that in there like so, and you can see how that fits. And you can see that if that wasn't in there, you could easily go wrong and fit that part there in the wrong place. So we've got that done now. We're not going to glue it in. I don't want to glue it in yet because I want to know if those ejector pin marks need to be done. But it's there now, so that when we position our part, we can put it in there, hold it in place, take that out, and just put some glue in to hold it in place. So we'll do that in a minute. I'm going to concentrate on this first. Okay, so I'm going to grab my little etch folder. This I'm going to use the small one. Okay, remember, if you haven't seen part 8, go and look at part 8. I talked about folding and everything on that one, and also I talked about cutting the parts off, so I won't bore you with that again. So I want, off of here, I want part number 28, part number 29 and part number 38. So use my little holder here. Remember, I'm going to go in with the blade and up, and then here I'm going to go in, up. That's that one off, and then I'm going to go here. Sorry if you heard that, was my stomach rumbling, it's tea time. And then in there like so. That's that one off. Nope, one of these hasn't quite gone through. There we are. So that's ready to be worked on. Now, something I should have done before I took it off the fret was just rough up the back face. To give the super glue something to hold on to when I decide to glue it onto that panel. Right, so we get these razor blades out. So this one's going to be folded up. Now remember what I said in part 8, when you actually look at these score lines, quite often the score line will be on the side you need to fold, but if you're folding it right over 180, always fold away. So if I had to fold that now, make sure you can see it, if I had to fold that now away to the back, I would actually make sure it goes that way. Okay, if you try and fold that this way and have it laying flat, it will snap off. So we're going to put that in there like so. Okay, we're going to bend this one first. Now if you remember, like I told you in part 8, we're going to get our razor blade. We're going to sit the razor blade in the groove that we're going to fold to. Okay, and now we've got the part, we can slide the part around wherever we want. I can slide it under there, push it up to the edge and clamp it. I know then that my fold is going to be exactly where I need it to be. Corner of the blade, run under just to lift it a touch. And then something I sometimes do is just slacken the clamp and then clamp it again as I'm folding it. Because sometimes if you are slightly too far in, when you fold it, it wants to try and pull the bottom out and it saves it snapping off. So we'll go over to 90 degrees. Okay, and then we can pull that out. once again put our blade into the groove. If you can see what I'm doing here, put the blade into the groove, slide it under, and then we know that our groove is in exactly the right place. The other thing you can do is pull it back a bit. Okay, and then get the blade underneath and fold. I'm going to slacken off the knob, tighten it, and then look at it and make sure it's 90 degrees. And we can see there that it's 90 degrees. And I've just realised something I didn't do on here. I didn't remove the nibs, did I? This is one of the problems when you make videos. You're trying to concentrate on what you're saying and you kind of lose track of what you're doing. So it's a bit of a problem. So these are my Tamiya folding pliers. I could have used these, but I much prefer to use these. The reason being is with any type of plier you get this kind of movement. You can see, if I can just show you, you can see that they can flex like this. So when you actually look at it on the top, you think you're folding it on the line and actually you're not. Okay, so that's a little something to be wary of. So I'm just going to hold that in there like that, and I've got a little sprue nib on the top of each one of those legs just to sand away. And there's also going to be a couple of nibs on this other end on here. As I said in part 8, with sanding photo etch you can feel it. When you've done it, it becomes smooth. When you start off with these little nibs sticking up, you sand it, and obviously you can feel it, and then as soon as it's smooth, it just the sanding becomes a lot easier. So the same on this one. I'm going to hold this again in the pliers so that I don't bend it. Holding it in bending pliers so I don't bend it, how's that, eh? And I'm just going to have the head of that just exposed. You can see that. Come on, focus. See the head just sticking out there? So now I can come along and just remove the nib off of there. And then turn it round and do the other end. Like so. Okay. And then with this one, what I might do is do it in the pliers because it's such a tiny little part. Okay, so it looks like the fold is there, so we'll just fold that up, turn it over, fold that up. When you've got tiny little parts of that, you don't necessarily have to be right, actually dead on the right place. Okay, so that's those two done. Now what it's telling us here is to add a piece of wire through there. Now I'm not exactly sure what this is. It's like something that hinges up. So I've come prepared with a piece of wire. I was prepared, but there is. And the actual size of these holes is 0.5, so I've got a piece of 0.5 brass, and we can see from the instructions that that little part goes inside that one. So this is going to be fun. So what I'll do, I doubt if I can do this on camera, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but what I'm going to do is slide, I'm going to put this over like that and try and get, no, it's not going to be easy, is it? I'll do this off camera and then I'll come back and tell you how I did it. Okay, we got it together, and I don't know how, but we did. One thing to watch with that particular part, if you are actually building this, it's easy to show on the instructions. It goes inside here, goes underneath there. What it tries to do is kind of, from there it is there, it tends to try and go that way and jam. So if I can just show you close up on here perhaps. I've bent the ends of the wire to stop it all falling apart. But this little piece here, this piece here underneath, where's my tweezers, that tries to sort of go over that way and jam in, so best to keep it away from going inside. So now this has got to be glued onto here, and it's going to go into there, into that area there forward of that hole. So what I'm going to do is put this in position on here. Okay, and you can see that we've got there's a photo etched area that shows where it fits. And what we can do is come along with our tweezers and hold it together like that. So we're using tweezers like a clamp. Okay, and once we're happy where that is, I mean, I'm making a lot of fuss over this part purely because I'm showing you. I'm not even sure this is even going to be even visible on the model. So we've got that there like that. Now you can see that that back piece is kind of sitting up, and it should be flat to the floor. So I'm just going to use my knife and see if I can push it down. There we go. It goes down easily, so I'm not too worried about that. I've also got that slightly off center, I think, so I'm just going to go with the knife and center that up. Just square it up on there. As I say, I'm making a lot of fuss, but it's purely to show you the techniques and the tools. As I say, this part is hardly going to be seen. It's like rudder pedals. A lot of people don't even bother putting them in. Now I'm tempted to have it, no, I won't have it slightly back. So this here is what's called a glue looper, and you can perhaps see on the end of here, if I show you close up, it's got like a loop in the end of it. If you're wondering why it's all burnt, come on, if you're wondering why it's burnt, it's because I use a lighter to remove any excess glue. So that will actually hold, if I can show you in here, it will actually hold a ball of glue in that little loop on the end. You can actually use a sewing needle and cut half of the eye off the end, and it gives you the similar shape. But these are great because they're really thin. They can get into sharp areas. So as soon as you get the glue in there, the capillary action will pull the glue out of that loop, and that should now be clamped down. Okay, now that bracket has come over the front, which it seems to want to do all the time. Just going to flip it over, just like so. Get it to go down behind. Which, now that I've glued it, it doesn't want to do. Bloody typical, isn't it? Here we go, it's gone down now. So that is also now flat on the floor. So get my glue looper, and then just put some glue in there. Put some glue in there. And that should be all held in place now, and that metal rod is still free to move. So I'm going to get my glue looper, and I'm going to put a drop of glue on the end there, and a drop of glue on the end there. And everything should now be nice and solid. And there we go, that's that piece done. So now that they're done, I can come along with an old pair of cutters. Don't use nice new ones. Old pair of Tamiya cutters here. And I can just get in there nice and tight and cut that off. Cut that off. Put that there for reuse. Never throw away bits of brass wire. That little piece there, although it's only tiny, If you're building a 35th scale tank, you need a little grab handle, perfect. So don't throw these bits of brass away, they're always worth keeping. So that is that little assembly there, done. Okay, so you can see we've got the brass rod going through, got the bracket in the middle, and that's all done. And then the excess glue that's on there, you can see the excess glue on the brass. You should be able to just come along and scrape that away easily. And then with this here, this is now going to go into the cockpit floor, and as we said, it's going to be up against this piece here. So what we're going to do is come along, put this in, whoops, slide that up forward. Alright, and we know that it's not going to foul that little piece, that piece of plastic there, which is F2, which is like a footrest type thing. But in the instructions it's saying that it should be behind it. So let's slide this back, put it back in, and just nudge that up so that it's just behind. I'm not going to make too much fuss about it because, as I've said, it's not going to be seen. So we got that in there now. That's pretty nice and square. Hold it in place with a pair of tweezers and it's moved. I'm not holding it, that's why, because that lump's in the way. Hold that there. Just check we're all good. Yep, we're all good. So I want to make sure it's square. And then once I'm happy, once again with the knife blade, plenty of glue on the knife blade, touch and let it wick under. Just going to push it down to make the capillary action work better. On the other side. And we'll go down the sides here, down the sides there. And we just push it all down, make sure the glue's capillaried under. It will drop across the back. And there we go, that's all down. Happy with that. Now, there is a tool you can get which is very much worth having, but there's a bit of a health hazard with these. This is a fibre pencil, and you can see it's got glass fibre strands in the end. The problem with these is when you're using them, the glass fibre strands come out, so you need to be careful with your skin, breathe them in and everything. And first of all, going to make sure the glue's nice and dry. Now, before that glue does dry, I can actually just scrape that away. So there's a little thing I've just taught myself. Let the glue gel and then scrape it away. But you can use a fibre pencil and just go over the photo etch with your fibre pencil and remove any excess glue that's on there. And it will also help to give a key for painting. Now you can see I've got in this area here, use this as a pointer, in this area here you can see we've got some glue, so you can rub over it with your fibre pencil and it will take it away. And if it proves a little bit stubborn, knife blade, just take away the worst of it. And there we are. So that's in there now, nice and neat and tidy. No real big glue problems anywhere. Bit of a glue edge, a bit of a glue on the back edge there, so we can rub it on the plastic. Be a little bit careful on the plastic with these things because they will leave a gouge behind if you just go mad in one area. And there we are. Under a coat of paint, that'll look lovely. Right, so let's look at these side pieces now, and then we'll call it a day. So we've got this one piece here and one piece here. Now something I am concerned about is this piece here is just going to be sat there all exposed and probably going to get bent. So I may do something to try and stiffen it up. So if we come along and we measure here, you can see that's a millimetre thick. So what I might do is get a piece of millimetre thick plastic card to place along there, and then another backing piece, and I might bring this out to the same width. I think this one here will be okay because it's got the top there and it's going to have a flange down the edge. But this one here is just going to be glued on there. It's just going to be sticking out in fresh air and have nothing to nothing supporting it. So let me get some bits of plastic card together and I'll show you how we go about that. So I'm checking to make sure I'm going to have clearance and that this piece of plastic card underneath won't get in the way. So when it goes in the fuselage, okay, we've got no problem there. No problem there at all. There's no issues with clearance in there. When it goes up against this, if you remember, I think it was in part 7, we added these brackets to hold the floor, because once you cut these side pieces off that we removed wherever they've gone, I threw them in the bin. When we remove these side pieces, now you've got no location. So we added this little structure here to hold the actual floor in place. Okay, so we knew where it had to go. Now, unfortunately, because I put these buttresses in the bottom, because a buttress in the bottom is a good thing, we've got it's going to get in the way. So I can either cut that off to the thickness of the plastic I'm going to put in there, or I can just make sure that the piece of supporting plastic I put in doesn't go underneath that buttress. So that's what I'm going to do. I've marked a line, as you can see there. I've marked a black line there so I don't go behind it. Okay, what I could actually do is go sort of 50-50, and I could actually cut some of that away, all right, and then put that in there, and then I can have my supporting piece going back a bit further. Okay, so we're kind of 50-50 now. All right, so we've still got the buttress there supporting it, and we'll still have that piece of plastic underneath. So any old piece of scrap plastic card can go underneath here, so I'm just going to cut that off like so. Doesn't matter how thick it is, doesn't matter what it is. And I've got an old piece here with holes in it, I could use that. So that's going to go up under there like so. Alright, I'm going to make sure it doesn't get in the way. Okay, so it's not going to get in the way of that where it slots into that in there. Okay, so that's like that. And what I'm going to do is put a drop of cement in. I'm using my Mr. Hobby Cement S. Alright, so I've got some glue on there now, and then quickly put this in the fuselage like so, just to make sure that it's not going to catch on anything. So that's like that, and now I can make sure I can pull this out, pull it out like that, and then I can push this. When I put this in the fuselage, hold the side in, and I can push the side over and make sure that that's not going to foul on the side of the fuselage, so it's not sticking out too much. So that's my little support piece there. So I'll put another drop of glue on there just to make sure it's going to be nice and solid. Now we've got a piece of 1mm thick styrene here. I think it's 1mm thick. Yep, 1mm thick, which is what I want. You can see I've shaved the edge of it because I've been using it for something else. And that is going to be, doesn't matter how long it goes fast forward. So I'm just going to cut that off too long, purposely too long. Okay, and I'm going to make a mark on it there, so I know that when I can cut that off. Get my rule, hold that down, get my knife, here we go. When you're cutting plastic card, don't try and cut through it, just come along and just scratch the surface. Okay, just a few passes across, just like that. And then you can simply, he says, snap it off. I haven't cut deep enough. Once you've got your guide there, you can use the knife. Can't believe how blunt this is. I've only just literally put this blade in before I started filming this bit. So here we go. And then I'm going to get a 400 grit and I'm just going to sand the surfaces to make sure there's no raised edges where the cuts go. And then I can glue that in there. I'm going to purposely leave it long at the back. Get some glue in there. Use my tweezers just to pull that together. And then we can put some glue in there. And just give it a light brushing over the top there. What that's doing now, you can see we've extended the plastic floor over, so when we add that piece of photo etch, which you'll see in a minute, that will actually give us something to glue the photo etch to, and it will give it some support. Just really, once it's in there, it won't matter, but while we're actually building it and while we're handling it and painting it and everything, we don't want this piece of photo etch just hanging about, because it will keep getting bent and broken off and everything. So this will actually help it stay where it is. Now, on this end here, we need to make sure that we haven't got that sticking out. So again, black pen on there, 220 grit sanding stick, and just very lightly sand over it until you see the pen start to disappear, and then you know it's all level then. Here we go. So we now know that that is straight and level across there. Now on the upper surface, I think it's very, very slightly raised, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to make sure it's flat. Just sand the side, and just as a quick check, just before we put the photo etch on, just going to make sure it's not going to foul on the fuselage. And it's not, it's barely touching it at the back, so I'm going to make sure that it's not actually touching. And now we know that as long as our photo etch doesn't extend beyond that plastic, then we know we're okay. Okay, so that's how we do that. And these videos, these next few videos, are going to be all about using this photo etch set in the cockpit. And I want to basically make sure that people have got the gist of using photo etch, because as I say, I've been asked quite a lot about how to do this sort of stuff, so I'm covering it in these videos, and I'll call the video photo etch for starters or something. Okay, now these little bits here, you can see me putting them in this plastic pot. The reason I do that, don't throw them away, keep them, and then you can make your sprue goo out of them. And then when you've got a decent amount in there, you can pour it in your Tamiya bottle, and there's your sprue goo. Right, so we're good to go now. So we'll get this piece of photo etch off of here. I'm not sure how long this video is going on for, but right, so we've got the front face and the back face. So this is our front face, it's got the rivet detail. The back face, I'm just going to get a sanding stick and just rough it up so it gets something for the, it's got to put something on there. And I'll do the same on this one, just in case I forget going forward, and the same on that one. And there we go. So they're roughed up now, ready for the glue, to give the glue something to grip on. So round blade, going to give it a clean off because I've been using it on the super glue. Okay, and then we're going to come along. It's very difficult to see where the nibs are with these old eyes. One on the end there, one on the end there. One there, one there, should be it. There we go. And then with our 400 grit stick, come along and sand away until it feels smooth. Just like that. Just like that, and just like that. And there we go, all cleaned up. And I'm just going to very lightly go over the front face just to help give the paint a bit of a key. Alright, so now we know we need to fold this. So we're going to use our sheet metal folder, or photo etch folder should I say. Come along with our razor blade into the groove, slide across, razor blade under the edge, 90 degrees, slacken, tighten, and there we are. That's that done. And we're good to go. And now that is going to glue into there. Just like so, and it's going to go up against that back face. Now I've folded that slightly over 90 degrees, so I'm just going to just relieve it a bit. And the big thing you want to try and do with photo etch, guys, when you fit it, if you have to bend it and it springs and everything, take the spring out of it. Try not to have it glued to the model under tension. Like, don't try and hold it down and pull it down, because it will just spring away. I think I went through that before with you in part 8, but that's something I can't tell you enough. Just make sure that it doesn't have the chance to sort of ping off. So make it just want to sit there naturally under its own weight, as it were. Right, now the beauty of this one, I can glue it from behind. And we can see that it wants to kind of go out of square at the back. So I'm going to get my Tamiya pliers and I'm just going to give this a tiny little tweak. I've gone the wrong way. There we go. So when I hold that flat up against that face now, the back stays where it is. It doesn't want to pull over. And I have noticed I've got a bit of a nib showing on the edge of there, which is annoying me. You can just see that on there. I'm just going to sand that away. And then this can go on there. And that's looking lovely. So I will come in with my, wherever it's gone, my glue looper. That glue is dried out already, I can't believe that. So get some more glue. And then we can hold that in place. If you notice with photo etch, I always try and get it in position before I glue it, because one of the problems with super glue is you don't get a chance to play with it unless you use a slower setting one. As your glues get older and thicker, don't throw them away, because the older they get, the longer they take to set, and that can sometimes be a benefit. Okay, so I can put some in there. I can put some in there. That should be that. And then I'm going to use my knife blade and come in from underneath it so I don't fill that rivet detail up. Just get some glue on there like that. Oops, glue my finger to it. There we are. Get the knife blade in there. Should be able to get the knife blade in there as well, yep. That'll hold that in place beautifully. Now one other thing you can do, just to give it a bit of a backup, is get some of your thicker super glue and just straight out of the bottle just put some in there and let it sit there. Grab a cotton bud and just remove that which I've just put on that edge there. And that will just sit in there and give it a little bit of an extra something to cling onto so it doesn't ping off if you should catch the edge of it or something. And one other thing I'm going to do is come along the back edge with my knife blade. And what I could actually do is come along the inside edge here, just like so, and then cotton bud over the top. There we are, job done. There you are, there's another piece of photo etch added in there. So I think we'll call that a day for this one because I don't want you getting too bored. Now the next one, the next part, part 10, is going to be continuing with the cockpit. And I think what we'll do is stick with the cockpit until it's done, because I know that a few people have asked, you know, about detailing cockpits and photo etch and seat belts and all that. We've got the photo etch seat belts for this, which aren't my favourite choice. I'd rather use HGW belts if I'm honest. But there we go. Now I may do a little work off camera, but I won't do anything that's different from what you've already seen. Like I won't do any sheet metal folding or anything. But we can see now that we got that all together. The detail is just way superior to the than the plastic. All right, so there we are. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you all for part 10 very soon. Bye for now.